Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. But debt is the money of slaves. I just love that quote from Norm Franz. It speaks to the insanity of debt and the value and worth of gold and silver. Over the next decade, guys, I am really convinced that gold and silver are going to be where you want much of your wealth. Do you want to protect it from the ravages of inflation? This is what you need to be stacking. For those who also have money locked up in their investment accounts, their IRAs, you can benefit from a long-term approach with gold and silver with some speculative mining companies. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching Yankee Stacking. In this video, I'm going to talk with Scott Berdahl, the director and co-founder of Snowline Gold. And we're going to talk about silver and gold, what's happening in the economy, and of course about his junior mining company. I will obviously put Scott through my paces when it comes to the Yankee Quadrant. That's management, projects, ownerships, financials. But I also want to take time to talk about their story, a father-son team who privately staked out territories in the Yukon for over 30 years. And yes, I am being compensated for conducting this interview with Scott, and I'm also still researching Snowline. They do seem to pass muster, but I'm not rubber stamping them. So let's check out Snowline together and see if this is a junior mining company to watch. Welcome, Scott. Thank you so much for joining Yankee Stacking.
Thanks, Yankee. Happy to be here.
Now, this is our first time chatting, and I wanted to make you aware of what kind of community that you're in. And what we're really passionate about here on Yankee Stacking, and that is gold and silver and stacking this stuff, okay? So I got to ask you, are you a stacker, Scott?
I am, yeah. Yeah, I think having a position in precious metals is important, and there's, at some scale, there's no better way to do that than just to have it on hand. And kind of in addition to that, I mean, I put a lot of my own, I guess, time and income and everything else into prospecting, which is, I mean, maybe not quite as guaranteed as stacking, but sort of buying into a higher leverage situation in exploring for gold itself.
Yeah, you have a really great story we're going to get into. I want to take a minute to delve into macroeconomics. First, inflation. Lumber, iron ore, steel, copper, oil, wheat. You choose any of the major agricultural commodities or base metals, and they're like rallying to 52-week highs or all-time highs. It's crazy. And I think we're living in unprecedented times when it comes to fiscal, monetary behavior by governments and the Federal Reserve. What are your thoughts on current and future inflation, especially when it comes to gold and silver?
Yeah, well, I think you're right to call it unprecedented. I mean, you don't have to be an expert just to look at a graph of public debt and see the jump that we've had in the past year. It really is uncharted territory, and yeah, seeing this spike. And I know that a lot of people are dismissing this as a temporary monetary price spike, just supply shortages, and certainly there's got to be some aspect of that. But I think when you pump that kind of liquidity into a market, and you have all these different interlocking parts of an economy all going up together. I mean, it's hard to unwind from that, especially with $4 trillion extra money suddenly sloshing around. So as far as that relates to gold and silver, I mean, that can really only be good news. I mean, you saw the spike in the gold price after after the last big round of liquidity following the Great Recession of 2008. And I think it was not only a spike; it did shoot up and come back down, but it found a higher base after that. So whether or not it spikes now, I think we're approaching a higher baseline as well. This time around, it's not just one sector; it's across the board.
That's a good point. We have this DeDollarization that seems to be accelerating right now. We're seeing global reserves of the dollar going down. Russia's already removing the U.S. dollar from its wealth fund. Do you expect the dollar to continue to weaken in the years ahead?
I think it really depends on, well, a lot of factors, but one of them being uh, how the U.S. plays its cards, especially with its fiscal policies. And right now, I would argue, they're not playing a very strong hand to keeping the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. And I think you see factors like, I'm sure your viewers are probably know better than I do the details of Basel III, and I think you're seeing steps in that direction taken by the international community to address that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, that's a tentative step in the path towards kind of returning to a sort of gold standard on a global scale to address that weakening of the U.S. dollar's position as a reserve currency.
Yeah, you mentioned Basel III. It's going to be interesting to see what effect, if any, that has at the end of this month. One thing that I don't think our viewers might realize is that the price of gold and silver has risen over the past 20 years even more than equities and real estate. In fact, last year, about half of precious metals purchases came from investors. What is it about gold and silver that just keeps us, so enthralled with it? Helps, see this stuff as money, real money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I guess it's shiny, but I mean, it's more than that. It's obviously held on to this status for thousands of years, and it has just uh, it has kind of cemented itself as something of value, and just in the nature of the universe, it is an irreplaceable thing. I mean, you can see how strong something like the dollar, a concept like the dollar, becomes when it's based on nothing. We have that with gold, but it's based on something, and I think we have millennia to show for it.
Mm-hmm. All right, Scott. Let's turn our attention to your junior mining company, Snowline Gold. I've showcased various gold, silver, even copper exploration companies for my viewers to keep an eye on, maybe even speculate in. I run each of them through what I call the Yankee Quadrant. All right, it's just four factors that I consider very important to take into consideration before you invest, especially with a junior where the risk and reward is great, right? So it's
Exactly.
management, projects, ownership, and financials. So you're the director, founder, Snowline. You are a professional geologist, and you were born and raised in the Yukon, which I think is really cool. Because I just think that's an amazing place to live.
It
And
is.
you have a remarkable father-son story, too. Actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background there?
Sure. My dad was and still is a prospector, and so from when I was a very little kid, he would drag me out into the bush, and we'd go poke around looking for gold, and yeah, did that summer after summer for many years.
Did
Lots
he
of
have to drag you in the beginning?
uh, yeah. At first, I think it took a while, and I started to realize that after a trip, thinking back to it, that like, oh, that was actually kind of fun. I don't know if it's Stockholm syndrome or what, but here I am, a geologist now, a prospector. So
I got that
um,
bug bit, huh?
a lot
Just,
of bugs, a lot of bears, a lot of rainy days. That's probably the worst. It's just the rain. Um,
wow.
but no, it was a fantastic way to grow up, and yeah, we went from pretty humble beginnings in a little shack without power or water, and kind of eked our way out through a series of discoveries, or my dad's discoveries, and yeah, after going to university,
Mhm.
it was well timed so that I came out just in the lead up to the last gold rush, following the Great Recession and the spike in gold prices then, and suddenly there was a lot of interest in what we had and what we were doing, and yeah, I was fortuitous enough, I suppose, to have studied geology, so I was freshly minted and got back into it in a big way then.
So tell us about the rest of your team.
We're, I guess, kind of an intergenerational company in that we have Nicholas Matisik as our CEO, and he's another person with it in his blood. He comes from the Matisik family. Paul
Hmm.
Matisik, his father, who is also a technical advisor to the company, as is my father. Paul has built and sold a series of companies over the past 10 years. And yeah, on an impressive timeline of just setting these things up, finding good properties with good value, putting them together, advancing them to a stage where they're attractive for a major or someone else to take out. And so we're very lucky to have both the Matisics involved. We also have on our board Craig Hart, who was most recently chair of the Mineral Deposit Research Unit at UBC. they're basically, the academic group that is helping majors understand what they have, where they have it. They're just studying gold deposits all over the world. And we have Sarah Weber as well, who has done some really great work with various First Nations in the area, mostly in British Columbia, and community consultation and that sort of thing. So getting social license to operate is a big focus for us too.
And I notice also one of your technical advisors is Quentin Henney. Oh man, Dr. Henney is a great guy. I've actually interviewed him before too. He knows his stuff.
That was kind of a happy coincidence on our part that there was one of these conferences for exploration companies quite a few years ago where my dad and I were trying to vend some properties, and he pointed Quentin out. I guess they had some dealings in the past, and he just said, there is a really sharp geologist, and this was before Quentin's kind of crazy trajectory. And he was like, that's a guy you should get to know. And so I took his advice and got to know Quentin. And funnily enough, with one of our flagship projects with Snowline, Einerson, I was finding this unusual type of gold mineralization. They're making these really interesting discoveries. And I brought these to Quentin, and he was like, oh, that looks really familiar. We have this company called Newfound Gold working out in Newfoundland, and they're just getting these insane intervals in this really shallow type of orogenic gold environment, and so to have stumbled into a new system like that up there, and to have Quentin already working on one, and he was pretty excited to see the rocks we brought him. Overall, we have 7 projects that we took. These were from the past 3 decades or more of prospecting that my father and I did. Mm-hmm. And these are kind of the flagship assets, the flagship 7 really. And then, and of those, we've decided to focus on Rogue and Einerson for their basically regional scale potential. Like I said, this is a totally new type of gold to be found in this area. And actually, Einerson has seen very little exploration whatsoever.
I was reading that Einerson, they said it was entirely novel. That I think it was prior to 2010. There hadn't been any exploration for gold known to have occurred anywhere in the vicinity of that project. Is that right?
That's right. It's like a Luxembourg-sized area, and the Yukon does a very good job of keeping track of who does what, and they have this nice mineral file system where you can look up and see who's done what, where, when, and what they found. And this area has seen basically, well, zero. It had one group in the 1970s do a very small program looking for lead zinc mineralization, and it's funny because you can kind of see why. Like from a geological point of view, these are really shallow rocks. They're old, but they've never been put down into the kind of grinding circuits down in the lower part of the crust and come back up like a lot of deposits you see. It's a super shallow stuff, and so traditionally that hasn't been necessarily too interesting, especially for this type of gold deposit. But I think these epizonal orogenic, that just means shallow level, sort of mountain collision gold deposits, they're really coming into the spotlight now. People are realizing what you find in these systems. And then you also have things like the Carlin Trend in Nevada, which some of your viewers might recognize as one of the biggest gold provinces in the world. And that's another really shallow system in these really otherwise boring rocks. All the stampeders to California just cut right through Nevada, some of the richest gold fields in the world. So it's neat to basically be stumbling into something that that you can have this Luxembourg-sized area. We have the baseline data on it, and these targets are very low hanging, and that's what we're doing this summer is finally testing them out.
There's some, that was the most exciting news that I recently read, is that drilling was about to commence, I think, right in one of the zones at least, this month.
That's right. If I'm unshaven and have bags under my eyes, I just got back from the field last night. So
last night? Oh, wow.
That's right. Yeah, I was out there for about 3 weeks. We got the program kicked off and the drill's out there, and things are underway. So we're pretty excited right now.
What's the concentrations look like in that area?
At Einerson, we're seeing in these gold quartz veins some pretty high grades, anywhere from a few grams to about an ounce per ton. I think the highest that we've sampled so far is 34 grams, so pretty much 1 troy ounce. But we're really just scratching the surface there. And the thing is, these are big quartz boulders that you find just in the middle of a stream, running up to an ounce per ton. And so that no one has ever even prospected that before. Like a prospector would have clued in on that right away. So it's a pretty special place to be. At Rogue, Rogue's really interesting. So Rogue is traditionally there. You have these intrusions, like these old volcanoes that didn't make it up to the surface, and they have generally been seen as sort of low tonnage or high tonnage, low grade bulk mining sort of a target. But what we've also got is these very high grade veins. So we might have a bulk tonnage target, but have these high grade sweeteners. So far, we've found on surface there veins that are assaying up to 152 grams per ton. So that's 4 or 5 ounces per ton. So we're pretty excited about the high grade potential there too.
Great. So one of the other things that I look at too is the accessibility to these locations, the type of infrastructure around there. What is that like for both Einerson and Rogue?
Yeah. So, I mean, the Yukon is admittedly
it's the Yukon.
It's the Yukon. But I think that's part of why the opportunity exists. I mean, that's how you can find a Luxembourg-sized area that has not had a rock cracked open in it. But we're not in terrible shape there. There's a road called the North Canal Road that goes up to a place called McMillan Pass, and there's a company doing lead zinc exploration up there right now. And from McMillan Pass, there's an old Winter Hall Road that goes to a silver mine that's just south of Rogue. So there are, and that's about 24 kilometers or so. I guess we should be talking in miles, but I don't know, 15 miles.
Yeah.
From a series of targets, both the ones at the south end of Rogue and at Einerson and at Rogue as well. And the access there is nice, like right down a valley. So for exploration, we're okay, kind of running with what we have, and then for future development, there are ways to access those properties.
Great. How are you doing this mining in an ecological, responsible way?
That's a great question because I live in the Yukon for a reason, for several, but one of those is that I love this place. We have an area the size of Spain with 30,000 people in it, so we're pretty lucky to kind of have that in our backyard, and doing our exploration in as low impact a manner as possible. I mean, I have guys out there marking their soil sites with biodegradable flagging tape. We've got, when we trench, we put the organics off on one side, and we only trench where we really think it's going to, give us good information. We're not just out there digging pits to see what we hit. Mm-hmm. We have an objective in mind before we do that sort of a thing. And so, organics to one side, fill to the other, fill it back in the reverse order, and you've got a scar there for a couple of years, but that'll come back together. And so we're really not at this stage where we're mining. We're in that exploration stage. And so we're doing what we can to ensure that we can basically have as little impact as possible on the land as we explore.
You did, in passing, mention something important here for the viewers to understand. This is the early stages of the Lassonde curve, right? This is the exploration, stage one type of thing where...
That's right.
Yeah, so it's exploratory, it's quite speculative. You don't know exactly what you're going to get, but the opportunity for an amazing return is possible.
That's right, and that's something that anyone interested in a company like Snowline should understand, is that it is a really speculative market, but it's high risk and high reward. So where you have you might find an undervalued mining company, or just buy a mining company and betting on the price of gold, and you might do very well for yourself there. But with an exploration company, we're actually looking to create value that didn't exist before. If we go out, we have our claims now, and we're drilling them now. And so, if we drill into a 1 million ounce or a 10 million ounce, whatever, gold deposit, whatever the size of the gold deposit we drill into, it's a gold deposit that just for anything that humanity knew didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. And now we have it. So, the reward upside is just tremendous.
I think that's attracted some pretty big names here. So I want to switch into the investor piece of the Yankee Quadrant, and that is people who have skin in the game here. And I saw two big names, and that's Eric Sprott and Keith Neumeyer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really lucky to have both on board and excited about the projects. Keith has been involved from an early stage, basically. It was a chance encounter with him that led to Snowline in its current form. I was looking to launch something like it, and ran into him, and he liked the idea, and basically did a lot of legwork in helping to make it happen. And so he's a very enthusiastic investor, And yeah, having Eric Sprott's stamp of approval on the projects and the portfolio is fantastic validation.
Sure
And
is. You also have Palisades Gold.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think the story is resonating. I mean, the geological potential is there, and yeah, it's I mean, like I say, it's a high risk business, but we have done everything we can to mitigate that risk and to target the biggest systems that we can.
Let's switch to company financials.
We raised about $7 million. Some of that went into just kind of cementing the property package and so on. And we currently have a budget for this season about $4.5 million, with some room to expand that if we really like what we're seeing. Yeah, we don't have any debt. You know, we're paying for things as we use them and going forward from there.
Snowline also announced something really exciting this month. You were approved for trading on the over-the-counter market under the symbol SNWGF. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So
congratulations.
It's great. And now, of course, Yankees can stack our stock if you prefer a more volatile form of gold.
Well, I do love to have it in hand. I'll have to admit it. I love the idea of getting in on a leverage play for what could be happening with gold and silver over the next few years. And I think it's exciting that there's an opportunity to invest over-the-counter market under, again, SNWGF. And for our Canadian listeners, Snowline is still on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol SGD.
Yeah.
So how can people get more information, Scott?
Yeah, we're happy to talk to shareholders or interested investors. And a good place to start is just the website. We've got a good presentation on there. They can dig into our properties and take a look. But yeah, we're definitely always available to talk.
Excellent. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Scott. Really informative.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
The information about Snowline will be in the description of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I hope your day is A-OK.